Good morning, homesteaders. Today I'm going to show you how to water bath can homemade elderberry syrup. Now, I call it syrup because that's the typical word for it, but actually what I'm making is a tonic because it is actually going to be very watery, more like a tea kind of watery and not the thick syrupy stuff that you're used to with medicines. So I'm not going to be adding anything that would keep this from being organic. I will add a little tiny bit of gelatin because it's good for the gut, but I'm using all organic products here for my elderberry syrup. Now I have dried elderberries because I don't live in a region where there are fresh elderberries, so that's kind of pushing more out Midwest. So if you're in the southern regions, we don't have the climate for elderberries, so we have to buy dried elderberries. And I did attach a link for that in my winter post, but I'll attach another link for the dried elderberries that are good to use because you want organic, dried, as fresh as possible elderberries to be able to put into your elderberry syrup. So I'm going to show you right now the stuff that I'm using for mine because I like to make sure that it's really gut healthy, that it's going to actually be an immune booster. So I don't want something that's going to be immune support. So if you're going to do a support, you can strictly do elderberries with honey. But if you want an actual boost, then you need some of these herbs and things as well. So I have fresh cut ginger, which I try to keep on hand during the winter time. I try and keep ginger root because ginger root lasts forever. So you could buy one and it keeps pretty well. I have cinnamon sticks. I have whole cloves. I have a lemon for my lemon juice because you need lemon juice if you're going to preserve these. I have a little bit of gelatin, which I have not gotten out yet. I'll show you that in a minute. And I have my elderberries. Here, this is my elderberries. They're gonna actually go bad on December 1st. So I need to use as many of those as possible. And then if you can't find local honey, which I can, but I'd rather not use it for, for syrups. So I actually got the Costco organic raw honey, which will do the same exact thing that I want it to do. So it's going to be an immune booster. So anyway, I'm going to get my water heated up in my pot and I'll be back. Okay guys, so I have gotten my elderberries boiling and I've got my pans hot. So what I added to my elderberries was 1 cinnamon stick, 5 whole cloves. So you need whole cloves, not ground. So I added 5 whole cloves. I threw in my ginger. And I went ahead and added in my lemon juice. I'm not adding my honey yet because you do not need to bring your honey to a boil or get it too terribly hot, or it'll actually cook out all the healthy properties in your honey. So you need to keep your honey on the coolest end as possible. So after I strain this out, then I'll let it cool a little bit and then I'll add my honey and it'll all go in the canner in my warm jars here. So let me go ahead and start straining this, and I'm going to turn off my stove. And over here, I've got my jars that are in my boiling water because I want them nice and hot whenever I ladle my hot liquid in there. Because if you have a cold jar and you're ladling hot liquid in a cold jar, then that could actually cause your jar to crack or even explode if it's going to go in hot water. So you need to make sure that both of them are equally as hot. So I'm going to take my measuring cup because that makes it a little bit easier for me. A tablespoon is just slow and go, so I like to use a measuring cup to ladle this out. And I'm just going to put it over my strainer. So that's going to also make sure that I don't have whole cloves hanging out in there, and that I also don't have any ginger. It's just going to strain all this stuff out. Look at that, isn't that pretty? That liquid just coming right out. I'm going to press down on those berries and really push those antioxidants down, because they actually cook out into that syrup. So all the antioxidants that were in those berries are now sitting in that syrup, and that's exactly what we want. Okay. Yeah, there's a big old piece of my ginger. It's starting to turn a bit of that purpley color. Your berries might change color and not be as rich in color as they were when you actually had them right out of the package, and that's a good thing because that means that the antioxidants that gave them that color aren't in there anymore, but instead they're in your liquid. I'm going to give it a little press again. Look at all that coming out. Perfect. You want to get as much of that out as possible. That's the good stuff. When you press your berry, that's the good juice inside. All right. There's some more of my ginger. There's my cinnamon stick. Just gonna go ahead and put all that over the strainer. Okay. Now I'm gonna press that out too. Okay, after I'm done pressing that out, I'm actually gonna let this sit for a few minutes, the syrup, while I wait for it to cool, and then after it cools a little bit, I'm gonna add the entire container of honey. If you want your kids to take this, you need a lot of honey to sweeten it. Plus, your honey is really good for you, so you wanna add as much as possible. Some people add 2 cups, it depends on what recipe you have. I did 4 cups of water, and I'm doing a full cup of honey. So I'm actually gonna be using this entire container of honey in this in just a minute after it cools. So I will be right back. Okay, so now I'm going to add my honey because my liquid is just cool enough. You can still see some steam coming off the top, so it's pretty warm still, but I'm still gonna add my honey on in. And I wanna make sure that this is a good cup of honey that goes in. And I still have a little bit left, even though it said this was 8 ounces. I'm gonna go ahead and just dump more because my kids won't take it unless it's super sweet. Okay. And now I'm going to kind of give that a little bit of a stir here. See it go in, get it out of my measuring cup here. It's already dissolving really well. The honey dissolves very quickly. It's not like granulated sugar where it takes forever and a lot of stirring. This honey is already in a very liquid form. So it's already good and dissolved in there, and I'm gonna take it and start spooning it into my warm jars. Now these are warm, I can still handle them. So that's warm enough. If you can still handle it, then it's probably somewhere around 100 degrees. You want your jars between 90 and 100 degrees, which is handleable. And I am going to pour it in using my big funnel because I'm doing a liquid. The funnel and the little tongs that I'm gonna use, there's actually a magnetic lid grabber, but I wash my lids in soapy water and just get them out, so I don't need that right now. But there's all kinds of good stuff in the ball canning package, and you don't have to spend a whole lot for it. Maybe I'll do a giveaway on that next. Who knows, for my beginner canners that don't have one. Now then, let me just fill these up. I only have 4 half pints. And I'm actually going to do 1 full pint because I'm going to put some of this in my refrigerator to start taking, because we're going into the cold season, right? This is when your immune system kind of starts getting a little cruddy. You're going to take 1 teaspoon a day to continue just balancing your immune system and staying healthy. If you're starting to have symptoms and get sick, then you actually need to take 1 tablespoon every 2 hours. If you're starting to have some symptoms, and you need to do that as long as you're having symptoms of something. So since you're making this on your own, it's not going to be as expensive to take all of that, is it? And it's much better than being sick for 10 days. There we go. Fill that up. Now, I am going to check the headspace on it. So this is a headspace tool, and I've shown you this before. So each little step is a different number of inches. And I want 1/4 headspace, which is just that first little thing. So I don't have quite enough liquid in this jar. So I'm going to give it just a little bit more until it gets up to 1/4 headspace. And 1/4 headspace here. Just a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move this out because now I'm measuring, so I wanna make sure I've got the right amount of headspace. Headspace is important because if you allow too much air in your jar, then that allows it to go bad a lot faster. Air in your jar creates bacteria, and you don't want bacteria growing in your immune booster because that'll make you sick, right? So what's the point of having an immune booster if you have bacteria hanging out in it? So I'm gonna make sure I've got that headspace correct. All right, and I still have, I'm gonna put the rest of this in another jar for just me, but I'm showing you how to can it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get my paper towel, get some white vinegar on it, and wipe down my lids. This is also another important step, is making sure that the rims of your jar and the edges of your lids are completely free of any drips or anything that could actually go bad right under that rim, because that will ruin your entire batch. And with all that work, you really don't want to ruin your batch. And like I've said before in my beef stew canning video, vinegar is a safe way to clean this off because it's also edible. So it's not going to put any dangerous chemicals in your jar, like say trying to do this with Clorox wipes, which is not a good idea. And it's also more effective than water because vinegar naturally kills bacteria. So there we go. Now I'm going to take my lids, and I can use either new lids or lids I've already canned with. So I've already done muscadine juice with this one for 10 minutes in my canner, but it's okay. I can reuse it, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wipe, even though I already wiped this or cleaned it in hot soapy water, because I want it to be extra clean. So I'm going to put it on, just hold it in place, and put my rim on. You already heard it pop a little bit. That's because my liquid inside is warm, but that doesn't mean it's sealed. Not sealed. Okay, you've got to put it in your water bath canner. So now I'm going to put another one on. There we go. Get 2 more. Like I said, I washed all of these already in hot soapy water. Ball makes their lids now to where you do not have to have them hot. So it used to be back in Granny's day, when she'd do canning, her lids would have to stay hot before she put them on because of the seals. But nowadays, Ball has actually improved their technology to where your lids don't have to be hot to put them in the canner. So now I'm gonna get my little grabby doohickeys. Right? When you're doing homesteading, everything's a doohickey. And I'm going to put those in my hot water bath. Okay. And the water is just barely covering the lids, so I'm going to go ahead and crank that heat up a little bit more. I do have some bubbles going at the bottom because this was a rolling boil. And if you could come on over, my mom is taping this for me. So I want to show you about where the water needs to be, because you don't want to burn yourself. So your jars need to be completely immersed in the water, which is why it's easier to work with 1/2 pint jars for this step, because the bigger you get, the closer to the edge you're going to get. So you're going to have boiling water going everywhere when you're trying to get them out. It's very dangerous for you. So the 1/2 pints are really the best for my pot right here, but I'm going to just barely have them covered with water, and I'm going to let them sit in that for 10 minutes. And then they're going to be done, and I'm going to get them out because I definitely don't want my honey to go bad in there. So that is water bath canning. All you do is you let that sit for 10 minutes, you pull them out with your little tongs. You definitely need to check the seals. So you let them sit, you should hear that popping sound. It's music to my ears. So you should hear them popping, and you check their seals. If they're still kind of bouncing like that original seal did, then that means it's not sealed, and you need to try putting it in for another 10 minutes to get that seal in place. But if it's locked in place and you're able to kind of shake it, then it's going to be sealed. The last thing that you need to make sure that you do is once they're sealed, once the jar is cool, you remove your rim, because that's going to give you a complete seal, and you can check it to make sure there's no false seal. If you leave your rims on when you're storing canned goods, that can create a false seal. In other words, it looks like it's sealed, but it's not. And if it's not sealed, bacteria is seeping in, and that could cause your family to get poisoned, and I know you wouldn't want that. So you're always going to take off your rims, check it to make sure there's no false seal, and then you can store it. And that is how you make elderberry syrup.